3:16 p.m. 1500 hours, 16 minutes. Israel Standard Time, Daf Yomi. Tractate Makos, page 8b. Top of the page. Tameh mikol makom. It was continuing from the previous Amud that Rava replied that there it is different, as the verse states with regard to one impure with impurity imparted by a corpse. It says Tameh mikol makom. There on the top of 8b. He shall be impure. Numbers 19:13, indicating that the same halach would apply in any case, unrelated to the manner in which he became impure. Amar le ana meod tumato ka'amina. The Gemara challenges, he requires that verse for a different derivation as that which is taught in a braita. The phrase, he shall be impure, serves to include one who immersed that day and whose purification process will be completed at nightfall. If he enters the temple before nightfall, he is also liable to receive karet. The phrase later in that verse, his impurity is upon him, serves to include one who has not yet brought an atonement offering to complete the purification process. For example, a leper or a zav. Rava said to Ravina, I said that the halacha, that one rendered impure by a met mitzvah is liable to receive karet is derived from the extraneous term yet. In the phrase later in that same verse, his impurity is yet upon him, which indicates that one is liable for entering the temple in a state of impurity regardless of the manner in which he became impure. That is one version of the discussion. Rabbi Akiva oimer eino tzarich lo ma'achorish shel shvi'is v'katzer shel shvi'is sherei kfar ne'emar sad chalot yizra kav chalot yizboil אלא אפילו ערב שביעיס שנכנס לשביעיס וקצר של שביעיס שיצא למועצת שביעיס. Some teach this exchange with regard to this braita is in plowing and in harvest you shall rest. Exodus 34:21. Rabbi Akiva says this verse is referring to the sabbatical year. The Torah does not need to state the prohibition against plowing during the sabbatical year or harvesting during the sabbatical year, as it is already stated, you shall neither sow your field nor prune your vineyard. Leviticus 25, verse 4. What then is derived from this verse? Rather, it is derived that even plowing on the eve of the sabbatical year, which facilitates growth of crops, when the sabbatical year enters, and the harvest of crops that grew during the sabbatical year, which emerged and were reaped after the conclusion of the sabbatical year, are prohibited. Rabbi Yishmael Omer, Ma charish rishus Af katsir rishus Yatsa katsira Omer Shu mitzvah. Rabbi Yishmael says that this verse in Exodus is not referring to the sabbatical year. Rather, The reference is to plowing and harvesting on Shabbat. Just as plowing is optional, and there is no case where there is a mitzvah to plow per se, so too the harvesting mentioned in the verse is optional. This serves to exclude from the prohibition of harvesting of barley for the Omer offering, which is a mitzvah, and is therefore permitted on Shabbat. Amar lehahu mirabanan l'rava mimai de charisha d'reshuz dilma charisha is omer de mitzvah vafilu hachi amar nachman tishbot amar le keva di matzah charush eno choresh lav mitzvah. One of the sages said to Rava, "From where does Rabbi Yishmael ascertain that the plowing mentioned in the verse is referring to plowing that is optional? Perhaps the reference is to plowing a field to grow barley for use in the Omer offering, which is a mitzvah. And even so, the merciful one states, you shall rest." Rava said to him, "Since if one found the field already plowed, but he need not plow the field, but he may directly proceed to sow the barley in the plowed field." Clearly, even if one plows a field to facilitate fulfillment of a mitzvah, plowing is not a mitzvah per se. Esfei Rabbi Nalavi Yotzav Makos Benoi V'harav Haroides Talmidoi Ushliach Beis Din Ramai Lema Kevan De'ilu Gemir Alav Mitzvah Hashtanami Lav Mitzvah Osama Afal Gav De Gemir Anami Mitzvah Gavid Yichsiv Yas Rabin Ho Yanichecho. Ravina raised an objection to the opinion of Rava from the clause of the Mishnah that states that the example of the forest serves to exclude a father who strikes his son, and a teacher who oppresses his student, and an agent of the court. And according to your opinion, why are a father who strikes his son and a teacher who oppresses his student excluded from exile? Let us say, with regard to a father who strikes his son, since if the son was learned, it is not a mitzvah to strike him. Now, in a case where the son is not learned and he strikes him to facilitate his education too, it is not a mitzvah, and therefore he should be exiled. Rava replied, even if the son is learned, the father is performing a mitzvah by striking him from time to time. As it is written, chastise your son, and he will give you rest, and he will give delight to your soul. Proverbs 29:17. He says chastise him. It doesn't mean hit him, but anyway, he interpreted it that way. Okay. Ve'is al-gedaytech mitzvah matzah katsur koitzer mitzvah l'ktsor ulavi. Rava then said, that which I said is nothing, as there is a different proof that the verse is not referring to plowing that is a mitzvah. Based on the juxtaposition of the two, it is derived that harvesting is similar to plowing, just as in the case of plowing. If one found the field already plowed, he need not plow, as there is no case where there is a mitzvah to plow per se. So too, with regard to harvesting as well, as if one found the barley already harvested, he need not harvest. And if it enters your mind that the reference in the verse is to plowing and harvesting for the purpose of the mitzvah, It is so that if one found the barley already harvested, he need not harvest. There is a mitzvah to harvest and bring the barley for the over offering. The prohibition in the verse applies only to harvesting that is optional. And now we start the Mishnah. Also, a new Mishnah. A new Mishnah. Okay, the Mishnah says, Ha'av goyle al yidei haben, haben goyle al yidei ha'av. Hakol goylim al yidei Yisrael, Yisrael goylim al yidei hen. Chutz miger toishav. Miger toishav ene goyle, ela al yidei ger toishav. A ger toishav. The father is exiled to a city of refuge due to his unintentional murder of his son, and the son is exiled due to his unintentional murder of his father. Everyone is exiled due to their unintentional murder of a Jew. Okay, again, I have to really, make a disclaimer. This is the Mishnah talking. I'm just reading it. And a Jew is exiled due to his unintentional murder of any of them, except for the unintentional murder of a Gentile who resides in Eretz Israel and observes the 7 Noachai mitzvot. And a ger toshav is exiled only due to his unintentional murder of a ger toshav. Okay. Next, the Talmud says, Ha'av gole al yidei haben ve'amart ve'amrit yatza'av Makos benoi Digemir amrit af al gav Digemir mitzvah Ishavalya dinagari. The Gemara says that the Mishnah teaches the father is exiled to a city of refuge due to his unintentional murder of his son. The Gemara asks, but didn't you say in the previous Mishnah to exclude a father who strikes his son who is not exiled? The Gemara answers, this Mishnah is referring to a son who is learned, and there is no mitzvah to strike him. Therefore, since the striking is optional, the father is exiled. The Gemara asks, but didn't you say that even the son is learned, the father performs a mitzvah of striking his son? The Gemara answers, this ruling of the Mishnah is stated with regard to a carpenter's apprentice. Since the father is teaching his son carpentry, not Torah, there is no mitzvah to strike him, to spur him to study. Okay, next. Shal shavalya dinagari chiyusa hi de lamede digemir umanuta achariti. The Gemara challenges in the case of a carpenter's apprentice, his father is teaching him a livelihood, which is also a mitzvah. The Gemara answers the reference is to a son who has already learned another craft, and since he is able to earn his livelihood, there is no mitzvah to teach him a second craft. Okay, good. Ve'haben gole al yidei ha'av kole u'rebinu maki nefesh prat lamaka aviv. Amar Rav Kahana lo kashya had Rabbi Shimon ve'harabanan. The Mishnah teaches that the son is exiled due to his unintentional murder of his father. And the Gemara raises a contradiction from a Brisa. It is written, and a murderer shall flee there, one who strikes a person unintentionally. Numbers 35:11, which is derived. That one who strikes a person is exiled. This serves to exclude one who strikes his father, whose punishment for doing so unintentionally is more severe than that of the standard intentional murder, and therefore the son is not subject to exile. Rav Kahana said, this is not difficult. This Braita is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, and that Mishnah is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis. Rabbi Shimon and the rabbis disagree in Sanhedrin 15a. Whether a son who kills his father intentionally is executed by strangulation or by the sword. Rabbi Shimon Davar Chana Kamar Misayif According to Rabbi Shimon, who says that strangulation is more severe than execution by the sword, which is why a son who kills his father is liable to be executed by strangulation. One who commits the unwitting violation of a prohibition generally punishable by execution by the sword. In other words, meaning that intentional murder of one who is not a parent is eligible for atonement by means of exile. One who commits the unwitting violation of a prohibition generally punishable by the more severe death of strangulation, meaning intentional murder of a parent, is not eligible for atonement by means of exile. By contrast, according to the rabbis who say execution by the sword is more severe than strangulation, which is why a son who kills his father is liable to be executed by the sword, a son who unintentionally kills his father has performed an unwitting violation of a prohibition generally punishable by execution by the sword. And one who commits an unwitting violation of a prohibition generally punishable by execution by the sword. In other words, intentional murder of one who is not a parent is eligible for atonement by means of exile. Rava Amar, Pradler Sechabua Be'aviv Shoyik, Sal Kadaita Hamina, Kevan Amazing Balakatalahu. The Shoyik Nami Nigle, Kamash Milan. Rava says that which was derived in the Braita, that one who strikes a person is exiled, to exclude one who strikes his father, who is not exiled, is not referring to a son who unintentionally kills his father, as in that case the son is certainly exiled. Rather, it is to exclude one who inflicts a wound on his father unwittingly. The novel element of this derivation is that it enters your mind to say, since in a case where he wounded his father intentionally, he is liable to be executed like a murderer, see Exodus 21:15. If he did so unwittingly, let him also be exiled like an unintentional murderer. Therefore, this derivation teaches us that exile is administered specifically to an unintentional murderer, but is not administered to the unwitting performer of any other transgression. Hakol goylin alidei Israel v'chulei. Hakol goylin alidei Israel le'esrei mai le'esrei evet v'kusi. Tanina le'adetanu Rabbanon evet v'kusi goyle v'loike al yedei Israel goyle v'loike al yedei kusi v'evet. The Mishnah teaches everyone is exiled due to their unintentional murder of a Jew, and a Jew is exiled due to his unintentional murder of any of them. The Gemara asks, everyone is exiled due to their unintentional murder of a Jew. What case that was not already specified does this phrase serve to add? The Gemara answers, it serves to add a Canaanite slave and a Samaritan. The Gemara notes, we learn by inference from this Mishnah that which the sages taught explicitly in the Braita. A Canaanite slave and a Samaritan are exiled and flogged due to a Jew, and a Jew is exiled and flogged due to a Samaritan and a Canaanite slave. Bishloima eved dekusi goyle ali Israel goyle v'dekatle el Israel goyle v'loike al yedei kuti bishlo goyle dekatli el loike mai delakati v'nasim cholosh zo'oyo be'oisema se im amecha. The Gemara analyzes the Braita. Granted, a slave and a Samaritan are exiled and flogged due to a Jew. Either of them is exiled in a case where he killed a Jew unintentionally, and flogged in a case where he cursed a Jew, thereby violating a Torah prohibition. But with regard to the halacha that a Jew is exiled and flogged due to a Samaritan, Granted, the Jew is exiled in a case where he killed the Samaritan unintentionally, but the Jew is flogged for violating what prohibition? For cursing the Samaritan? Isn't that prohibition derived from the verse, and a leader in your people you may not curse? Exodus 22:27, from which it is inferred that the prohibition is in effect only with regard to one who performs an action characteristic of your people, who comports himself as an observant, God-fearing Jew. Even if the conversion of the Samaritans was valid, they regularly violate numerous prohibitions, and they do not comport themselves as observant Jews. דכבש לגבי עבד שהעיד בו והוזם עבד בעבדוס הוא אלא אומר רבחה ברי דרביקה אך מעסקינן כגוין שיקהו הקאה. To be continued. Rather, Rav Bar Yaakov said that this braita is not referring to lashes administered for cursing. Rather, one is flogged in a case where a Jew testified against a Samaritan and a Samaritan testified against a Jew, and he was rendered a conspiring witness. The Gemara asks, does that mean that in the corresponding situation with regard to a Canaanite slave, a slave is flogged in a case where he testified against a Jew and was rendered a conspiring witness? Is a slave eligible to give testimony? Rather, Rav Acha, the son of Rika, said, what are we dealing with here? The Jew is flogged due to a slave and a Samaritan, and the slave and the Samaritan are flogged due to the Jew in a case where one struck the other with a blow. To be continued.